Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode number 8. I can't believe we've been doing this for 2 months now. I am Morgan Larson, founder of Bliss Real Estate Team, and this is Finding Bliss in Real Estate. I'm super excited today. I have one of my favorite people on the show, Miss Erin Barton with Chicago Title, and we'll tell you all about her in a minute, and we're going to talk all about title insurance, and believe it or not, title insurance can be exciting. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some California real estate stats compared to the nation. We've got a couple articles, and prior to the show, we were just mentioning how interesting it is to see the stats about people leaving, people going, people growing. Well, not people growing, but the houses growing. So anyways, let's start off by chatting with Miss Erin. So I have known Erin for almost 10 years, maybe 8 or 9 years. She is a sales rep with Chicago Title, and I frequently use Chicago Title as much as possible because their customer service is so awesome. And we don't have Miss Denise Stamberg here today, but she is amazing. So just props to her. And so Erin came into my life as someone to help me out with all my title and title insurance needs and escrow needs. And so she's been so much fun to hang out with over the years. So Erin, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you got into title insurance, escrow, and about your lovely family?
Yeah. Well, good morning. It's nice to be on here. Thank you very much for having me. I'm Erin with Chicago Title, as you mentioned, and I'm a sales executive. My role is, helping our real estate agents with our tools, our technology, helping you guys on the title and escrow side of things, with your customers, making sure they have a great experience with our company, making sure that their transaction goes smoothly. So, kind of all those things. I do a lot in my arena to make sure that, our agents are having a good experience with our company. So I've been in the business about 24 years, and I started as an escrow assistant, right? I was really young when I started.
Yes, must have been a baby, like 13.
Yeah. So yes, so been in the business a long time. I started as an escrow assistant and was in that for a little while, and really saw kind of how the sales executive position was and what it entailed. And so I was, very curious to get into that. So I got onto that side of the business, and have been in the business for just a really long time. I really enjoy it and working with my agents and lenders. Primarily, I've been in the Folsom territory for the majority of that time. I did spend some time in Sonoma County working in the title industry as well. So, it's been a really, really good industry for me, and I've enjoyed it a lot. So, we live in Rancho Murieta, my family and I. So I have a daughter who plays competitive softball, so it keeps us very, very busy. Mm-hmm. We are on the road a lot on the weekends, and but that's a lot of fun. So, between work and softball, there's kind of, that's my life.
Yeah. So are you a Sacramento native, or are you from elsewhere?
Actually, no, I'm from Sonoma County. I was born and raised in Sonoma County. And so I came here to go to Sac State and go to school. And when I was finished, I went back to Santa Rosa for just a short while, and I decided, I like Sacramento a lot, and I can afford to buy a home there. Right? Affordability, which is part of some of the information that we are going to talk about today. But so that's kind of was the draw for me. I loved this area, and it was affordable. And so I came back and created a life here, and kind of the rest is history. But I've been here a long time. I really enjoy this area. So a lot of people, I noticed a lot of people are coming from and have been over, the progression of about 20 years from the Bay Area, from different areas, on the coastline into the Valley area. So, and I think a lot of that is just drive of affordability, and, the jobs have been available. And so people are coming this direction. And I think that's kind of the trend that everything that I've been reading shows.
Yeah. I mean, people definitely love the Sacramento area. Truth be told, when I was a child growing up in Southern California, I looked at the map and I was like, why would anybody live that far away from the ocean? There's got to be nothing there.
Right.
Now I'm here.
Yeah. And what did they, everybody called Sacramento for years a cow town, and it just wasn't known for much, but now it's really become a really great place to, purchase a home and raise a family. And so I think that's great.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, well, let's hop in. So let's just start out with the basics on, tell us, because different places do this different ways. There's escrow and there's title. So tell us the difference between the two. Tell us what they are and what the difference is.
Okay. So I'll give you kind of an overview on it. And if there's anything that I missed, please, let me know. But so title and escrow in Northern California is housed under the same roof, is kind of how we say that and term that. Meaning that when you get into the escrow process, your title searching, all the title work that gets done is done by our title company at Chicago Title. Your title and escrow is coming from the same place, okay? We have a title department, they do the searching, they produce the documents on, what's recorded on your property, tax information, all that's going to be produced by our title department. So we have a whole bunch of people that sit in that area, examiners, title officers, that kind of stuff. And they do all the research on the property. They produce the preliminary report. That is one of the first documents that comes out on the escrow that kind of is our navigation point for how we do the transaction and what's going to be handled during the transaction. And that, so they do that. And then escrow is typically what a lot of people get to know as the escrow branches, right? Because you'll see our branch in Folsom and in different areas here in the Tri-County region. Those are our escrow branches. Our escrow officers are in those offices and they transact and do the transaction. So they are neutral third parties and they take in, they collect the documents from all the different parties, lenders, agents. They house the money for the transaction and they hold that as a neutral third party. And so everybody kind of communicates with escrow. Escrow is kind of when it gets into contracts, they're kind of the hub of where everything is deposited and the communication that comes through and how things get done. So obviously your contract's going to dictate what happens during your transaction and, different things, but we kind of follow along with that and just are kind of housing the process, if you will. So that, and we work directly with title, our title department, to go through the process and make sure we're conveying clear title to the new buyer, things like that. So we work seamlessly with our internal title department to do that. So when you get to different parts in California, Southern California, your title and escrow companies can be different entities. And they can be not under the same roof like we deem it here. So you can have like Chicago Title on the title and you can have like Mara Escrow on the escrow company. So it's separate and it's very confusing for people unless you're kind of there and you're used to it and you're a native there. So Northern California is kind of runs a little bit differently, but that's a little bit of a rundown on kind of how the process works together.
Yeah. So let's talk escrow for a second. We're just going to back up. So escrow, I was thinking, you have your escrow officer, right? That's their title. Like Denise is an escrow officer. I just got to get her badge out. And
I should have one of our business cards.
I always think of them as like the overall coordinator, like you said, they've got the lender who is trying to get them or is getting information from the escrow officer and then giving information. And then you have the two agents that are talking to them. And then in the end, they coordinate so that the buyer can sell their documents or sign, and the seller can sign their documents.
Yes.
Right. So kind of all the moving pieces.
Right. And then, after the signings happen, there's recording that happens at the county, and then it's officially closed and transferred once that happens. And then people receive their keys to move in, and everybody's kind of moving on their way. So that process, it takes a lot. It seems we simplify it a lot when we describe it, just because there's so many different moving parts. But we do have a lot of marketing materials that kind of explain what the process looks like and how all those different entities are working together and coming together to get to the final closing. So if you ever need something like that for your consumers or for your clients, that is something that we do have. And I just like to mention that because sometimes clients do really want to know all the different things that are going on and kind of what the timeline looks like. So there is information on that if they'd like that.
I think the other thing about escrow for people to know is like, it is that neutral third party, as in, I got this question recently and it hadn't come up in a while, but it was like, doesn't the seller already have the deposit? And I was like, no, the seller doesn't have the deposit. The escrow company holds the deposit until the
Yes.
very end. And they're like, oh, can't they release that money to them? It was a particular deal. So they were like, can't they release that money to them? And I was like, no, they can't release any money until the
Right.
very end, until
Right.
it's closed and recorded. And so it was interesting because, you know, I'm so used to it, but to hear a fresh, like, oh, people forget, or they don't know, and they think that the money is going directly, but really you wouldn't want to have that happen, because if something went wrong, you as a buyer are going to have a hard time getting that money back.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that is something that is those little components are things that people don't understand, they don't do this every day, right? And so that's kind of where we all come into play, is how do we help guide you through the transaction and just make sure you understand kind of where things are at and how the process works. But the depositing of money is really an important feature, you know, because it's a neutral third party. You know, your money is being held in a safe, secure spot until everything is reconciled and closed, right? And then everybody gets their, you know, the proceeds are dispersed out to the appropriate parties at that time, once we have the confirmations and everything. So, and that is something that a lot of people don't understand kind of what that process looks like, especially when they're bringing a deposit. Maybe they, you know, are getting their deposit into escrow. There's lots of ways they can do that. You know, one that has become very popular with the pandemic is our mobile deposits. So mobile deposits, we do have that option. I don't know if you knew that. So yeah, we do have that. Your clients literally can use their mobile devices and just, you probably can't even see my phone, there it is.
There you go.
But you can use your mobile device by taking a picture of it. You would literally, we have a portal, and it's called Start in Here. And our portal is a way for your customers to interface with escrow safely and securely, and give private information that we would need to do the transaction. So they can use this portal to give us the information, answer some questions in the very beginning of the escrow. And then they can also, it'll also ask them if they want to deposit their money through the mobile deposit. So it sends them a link, they verify some information, take a picture of the check, it uploads into the escrow. So again, very simplified version of that, but that's basically how it works. And it's a really, really cool thing that we've rolled out, and we are continuing to improve and make that portal, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to be a complete portal where you can get updates on what's going on your escrow directly from an app. So, you know, eventually consumer will be able to log in and see what's going on as well. So more transparency of what's going on in the transactions, so that everybody feels that they know what's, you know, where things are at and are comfortable with how things are moving forward. So
that's almost like depositing a check to your mobile bank kind of thing. That's the technology.
The same kind of, the same kind of concept there. We actually have our own technology for this, which again makes it more safe and secure. So, you know, we're not using any kind of a third party to deposit that money into your escrow. We have our own technology that you're depositing your money into on that escrow.
That's cool. I did not know that.
Yes. Yes. Well, people are just starting to kind of get more into using it. You know, again, you know, we talk about it, and I do a live on it every now and again, or, you know, on my social channels and such. But sometimes people just forget that we have it, and that that's an option, especially if somebody's traveling or they just can't get to one of our branches to drop off the deposit check. It's a really convenient way to get that in and just keep everything moving on along in the timeline there.
Yeah, well, that's great. Learned something already. So let's talk about title, because I think people don't, it took me a long time, even as a realtor, to really understand the importance of pulling a preliminary title report, understanding what's on it. And we don't need to go into all the details, but like, what is the basic? Why do we pull a title report?
So the title report's really important, like I mentioned. So when we're getting ready to handle a transaction, right, and we're going to be, in the end, we're going to be transferring the ownership interest from one party to another, right? And so when that new party takes over, they want to know that that property is free and clear of certain liens, certain encumbrances that may not be, like if title wasn't involved, there might be certain things that could transfer to them that wouldn't really be their, their lien or their, thing to clear up and pay off, right? So we make sure that things are cleared up, and only things like taxes and things that stay with the property taxes in particular are one of them that transfers to the new buyer. So you're always gonna have property taxes, right? There's certain things that stay with the property that are always gonna be there and that are gonna show up on the preliminary title report, but we make sure that they're paid current with the seller, right? And then the new buyer would then start making, would then be responsible when they take over. So, things like that, making sure there's no liens on the property, outstanding liens that maybe didn't get paid off, anybody that's owed money, debtors, making sure that there's not any other kind of lien holders out there that might have an interest in the property. Because you don't want somebody coming back to you saying, oh, well, I did some work on the fence over here and I didn't get paid, and they put a lien on the property. Something like that. Some different scenarios like that can happen. That's what your title insurance is for, and that's what we investigate when we're doing our title report and our searching with the county records. Yeah. We're looking for all those things and just making sure that there's nothing on the property that could, become an issue later for that new owner.
Yeah. I think one of the things that comes up a lot, I always feel very assured about the liens because I'm like, oh, they're going to find them. They're going to make sure they get paid off. So that's good. Right. But then there's the other aspect of easements in particular comes up all the time. And clients sometimes get confused about what an easement is, but really it's rights to part of your property for a lot of various reasons. Yeah. Whether it's somebody's driveway goes through your property or the utility companies are allowed to come onto your property. And so, I think sometimes it's in the report, but if we see an easement in a report, can we how do we get the document on that easement?
Typically, when we see that easement in a report, or even maybe before we have a preliminary report, but there's easements on the property, we can do some searching for you ahead of time and get some information on that. So mainly we are going to need the address. If we have it in our title report already, we obviously already know the address, and we can just search for that document. Usually there's a link in there that's going to say, not a link, but a document number for the county recorder that they would have recorded that easement onto that property. So it would show up in there in the prelim, and we would just pull that document number. And now in our preliminary reports, what we say a prelim, our preliminary report is, we do have hyperlinks for a lot of those. So you'll see the blue hyperlinks in there that will, if you click on them, will bring up the document itself. So a lot of times we can do some searching ahead of time. If you want color-coded easement maps, at the time that we order your prelim, just let us know you want a color-coded easement map, and it would color code and show where that easement is on the map itself. Those are very popular when you've got, a lot of the rural property that has a lot of easements and different easements like that. They can be very difficult to locate if they're not well known, right? Yeah. Because sometimes it's not a road. Sometimes it's just some kind of easement where there's where they say they might need access. Yeah. So there's different things that it may not be as obvious in some cases. And so we can map it on the map for you so that you and your clients will know exactly where that is and get you information on. So a lot of times we can do some of that ahead of time. And then obviously when we order the prelim, we can get you that color-coded easement map. So those are usually really helpful.
Those are handy tools. So question, let's say the escrow closes and then the new owner goes, you know what, I never got that color-coded easement map. Can they come back and ask you for it later?
We actually try to do them within the transaction. It's something that takes extra time and it's a little specialty. So we like to order it ahead of time. So it's best when you open your escrow that we get that for you and then they can have that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. What else about, what are some weird things that you've seen come up that you guys have sort of maybe saved the day on? I'm putting you on the spot, so it can be.
Yeah. There's lots of, there's been lots of scenarios over my years in the business where we've saved the day and closed transactions. We see all kinds of different situations where somebody forgot about a lien on a property,
Mhm.
somebody didn't realize or maybe had forgotten they have some kind of a lien sitting out there that maybe didn't attach to the property, but maybe is more a name lien. Those
Mhm.
those ones get a little bit tricky. As soon as you have an asset, typically a name lien, they'll attach to a property as well. Those lien holders will go ahead and attach it because they know if you go to sell that property that, they would get paid off that way. So a lot of times we've seen things where, for instance, we do a preliminary report, we get the escrow going, everything looks like it's going smoothly. When our escrow officer is reviewing the prelim, we don't see anything that looks, maybe there's a tax lien, but it's not showing up yet, right?
Okay.
Things like that. We've seen those scenarios where we review the prelim when we first get it and it's not on there and nobody says anything. The client doesn't say anything. The agent doesn't know because the client didn't say anything.
Right.
We don't show it on our prelim. But what happens in the escrow process during that 30, 40 days, whatever the length of time is that your transaction takes to close, when we initially pull that preliminary title report, obviously we search the full property, we do all that, right? So we should be showing everything on there that needs to be cleared or is either going to stay on the property or be taken care of before we transfer it. Before we close it though, we do what we call a date down. And so they do another search right before we close the transaction. We do another search of the property to see if anything during that 30 days or 45 days, whatever the length of your escrow has been, to see if anything else is posted on that property. Yeah. So that's something people don't understand at all. They're like, well, if this lien was always there, why didn't you get it the first time? And it may have been there. A couple things can happen sometimes. Oftentimes what happens is it gets pulled in that next 30 days. Sometimes it won't show up, especially if it's a name lien item. So sometimes it won't show up. So things like that can happen. And so sometimes we get down to closing and consumers and realtors alike are, how come we didn't find this earlier? Well, it didn't show up earlier, or your seller knew they had it, they just didn't mention it. Maybe they forgot. I mean, people do forget about things. So those are the kind of things that pop up at the last minute that we end up having to save the day on and try to get the demands or get things cleared up and taken care of really quickly. So sometimes those are the things that we go through.
Yeah, I would say, there is a difference in quality between escrow officers in particular, but different companies, I feel like, have different standards. So I'm just going to share a story and the company will remain nameless. But there was a time that I was helping a buyer buy a house and the prelim did come out, and I will say I didn't read it close enough. So my error. But a few days before the end of the transaction, it came out that, there was a second homeowner who was selling. And the whole time there'd only been one homeowner, and on the tax records only reflected one owner. And everybody, so that escrow company and that agent both tried to say that it was okay that the second seller hadn't signed any of the documents to sell. And I was shocked, and I did have to stall the transaction by about 24 or 48 hours because it was like, oh no, we're not. I mean, to me, that seems like a major error in changing of title. You have to have all owners sign that they're okay with selling.
Yes, because they have a financial interest in that property. So if that property had been transferred, they could come back and, that's a huge can of worms because you sold a property without giving somebody their interest in that property. So those are the things that your title policy ensures you for and protects you for. So should something like that happen, that's what your policy is for. And then when we close a transaction, you get your final title policy with your name on it. After you've purchased it, would change ownership information, obviously, into the new buyer's name. And you have that final title policy to refer back to should there be a claim or something come up that you have to discuss. A lot of times you would talk directly with our claims department about that at that point. Give them your title policy number and they would talk with you about, any kind of exposure or anything that's happened on that property.
Yeah, actually, and that's a great segue right into, title pulls the title report, but they're also, you literally are paying for an insurance policy.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit, you said a few things, but what does that kind of cover for them? What could happen?
It covers actually quite a bit, and it's a laundry list of items. We actually have again, another marketing piece or informational piece that shows you like a list of items that it covers. It covers all kinds of things, obviously liens, you know, all that kind of, you know, debt, any kind of debt or debtor type of issue or lien that would show up on a property. So those are, you know, those are just the beginnings of it, but there are lots of different things that your title policy covers. So and every company is a little bit different too. So it's always good if your client has questions on what the homeowner's policy covers, to give them that information, because it literally is like a list of probably 50 different things.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a really long list. But yes, we do have it, and it covers you against a lot of different exposures around the property as far as, you know, what has happened in the past, and protects your future. So that's kind of a really easy way to sum it up. But you know, I don't know if you want me to go through the list of 50.
No, but what are kind of maybe the top 3 things that you see frequently?
You know, your liens, errors that may be out there, right? So if there was somebody that, you know, any errors that are out there that maybe somebody didn't know or mention, you know, depending on what kind of a situation you're purchasing a home out of, things like that, your liens, making sure that your taxes are paid current, okay? Making sure that tax liens that belong to the proper parties are, you know, not getting attached to a property, and the new owner's not getting stuck with them. That's, you know, another one. Child support liens, same kind of concept there. Those come up and those can become a lot of issues that we see. Typically, these are all the kind of things that we see during the transaction that come up that we will find. You know, items sometimes that pop up later that would probably be more of a question for a claims department.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times it's you know, easement issues. It's maybe mechanic liens type, you know, if there was any construction done to the property, things of that nature.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing how much can be lien wise in particular can be attached to a property, you know?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it can be a lien from just a mortgage. It can be a lien from the county for overgrown weeds in a yard, literally.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it can be something like that attaches to the property. It can be you didn't pay your HOA and that they attach a lien, you know, things like that. So all those kind of different entities can sometimes, you know, put little road bumps in the transaction. So those are the things that title insurance protects against, and we make sure that gets handled properly so that it conveys that clear title.
Yeah. And anything with the IRS can get attached too, right? Income tax liens can be attached.
Income tax liens, IRS, state tax liens, those are always really difficult, just because it takes a lot of time to get the information from those entities. You know, sometimes it takes them 14 days and they're not in any hurry. They don't really care that we have a contract that's gonna, you know, that's closing in 10 days and it takes them 14. They're like, well, we're going to take our 14 days to get you the information.
Yes.
So, you know, there's stuff like that.
I've had a couple IRS tax liens, and it's funny how like things always come up at the same time. So it was like, we had 2 within a couple months, and one of them took a while. And then it didn't help that the seller was like on a trip in Europe, and like, you know, the whole thing went down. It's just, that was hard.
Yeah. And a lot of times too, I'm going to segue back to something that's really important that's becoming, like I mentioned, our portal that we use when you open escrow, our start in here, that's really becoming a really key part of helping us circumvent those problems later. You know, is catching them earlier. So when they log into the portal, it's a secure portal, and we ask them a few series of questions. It literally takes them about 4 minutes though to run through the questions. It's very simplified in the portal, but it does ask them very important questions about their transaction and things that help us clear things up. How are they going to take title? How long have, you know, if they're a seller, how long have they lived in this property? Things that help us clear up issues or liens or any documentation that may be recorded to the county that looks like it might be your seller. That when you answer those questions in our portal, that helps us clear that up and say, oh, this is not our seller, right? Because
Right.
we ask for pertinent information. We may be asking for social security numbers, things like that through the portal, and it's safe and secure, but it is really good that we have that, because then we can match up information and decide, yes, this belongs to this person, or no, it does not. So it doesn't need to be handled in our escrow. So because names are common.
Yes.
And that's oftentimes what we send out that information in a paper format we had for years, and your clients get it and they read it and, oh, I'll fill this out later, and they don't get back to it. And then we're at the end of the escrow and we need that. And then we find liens that were there that we couldn't clear. We couldn't decipher whether it was theirs or not because we didn't have their pertinent personal information.
Yeah. Yeah, that comes up a lot. So Jane Smith, Bob Smith, Mr. Jones, like you definitely have to get that stuff cleared early. So
yeah, we need to be able to verify, is it our party or not? And hopefully it's not, and we can just, move right through the transaction, but it's really important that we get that pertinent information. Again, the portal is becoming a huge time saver for everybody during the process, we're finding. So that's something that we really are hoping, to get clients utilizing more and more as we kind of move in this technology world.
Yeah. I mean, one thing about the last year is there's been some really great technology to make things easier for home buyers and home sellers, and all of us who are in the industry helping people buy and sell homes, which has been nice. So.
Yeah. The technology is not going to replace the people, but it does help facilitate to make the transaction faster and smoother and just stay on those timelines.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's see, what else are we missing? Anything else about title or escrow that we should chat about?
Just, some of the main things is, communicating with your escrow officer. Your consumer can communicate directly with your escrow officer too. They have questions, they have concerns, just making sure that everybody is ready to close their transaction and feels comfortable with, how everything is moving through that transaction.
Yeah. Well, before we segue to our couple of articles we're going to look at, Erin, how can people reach you if they need to? I know you've got a good Instagram presence.
Yeah, so you can reach me on the social channels. Just look for Erin Barton, my maiden name, and then my married name. And then you can definitely get a hold of me direct on my cell phone, 916-798-4115. If you do a Google search, I usually pop right up with Chicago Title. So you'll see all my contact information there, email addresses and such. So you can reach out anytime. And we do have for consumer information, or for people that just want information on title and escrow too, we do have a lot of information on our ChicagoTitleLibrary.com. So that's a good resource.
Okay. Yeah, and if you wanted to, you could send me the couple documents that you were talking about, and then I could put them in the show notes. So
that would be great.
For you guys watching, it'll be attached in the show notes if you were interested in some of that further information there. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and we'll talk about these couple of articles. Okay, we're actually going to start. Yeah, we will start here. And we move to the top. All right. Can you see my screen there, Erin?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So both of these articles come from the SACB. Both are fairly recent. This one's a couple weeks ago and the other one is a little bit more fresh. I like this one. It says, even a pandemic couldn't stop the population and housing boom in Sacramento. And it said, this is specifically about Elk Grove, but it also goes into more of the Sacramento stats. And so I thought this was cool. So California's population, and we've been hearing this, right? The mass exodus of California, everybody's leaving, which is not quite true. We'll get to that in a second, but the population has shrank for the first time in California's history in 2020. And by the numbers, we're down about 182,000 people, or 0.46%, which is actually about the same as the population of Elk Grove.
Wow.
By chance there. However, in Sacramento, overall, Sacramento is up about 0.5%. And so that, I think, includes the Tri-County area. And then specific cities have had bigger increases. Specifically Elk Grove, a 1.2% population increase. Folsom has increased by 1.5%, and Rancho Cordova by 1.7%, which that one was a little shocking to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is interesting to see that. But the growth, I mean, that growth in Folsom is very interesting, and they're just doing so much building, that's really drawing folks to this area.
Yeah. And I think, all three of those and all three of those communities, and then of course, Roseville and Rockland are all doing a lot of new housing, which allows more growth to happen, really. Because we're like everywhere else in California and the nation. We don't have enough houses either for people to buy or expand or so on. Yeah, you can see down here on this graph, I thought this was interesting. It shows the year-to-year population change. You can see there was a big boom in Sacramento's population and California's in the late 80s, early 90s, but always growing. This is, this side shows positive growth, and here is the negative growth, first time in California. It's interesting. It says down 0.8% here, and earlier in the article it said 0.46. So somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And Sacramento's growth is actually a little slower overall than you would think it would be. It's actually down from 2019. What do you think might be some of the causes that, even though we seem like we're having this massive boom, growth rates are down a little bit from last year?
I mean, that's interesting, because it feels like, and it looks like, when you drive into Folsom, which is where I'm stationed every day, there's plenty of growth going on with the development in the building. So it's a little interesting to me that population changes is there, but I'm not sure what factors do you think are contributing to that the most?
I wonder a little bit if maybe multifamily, like big apartment structures, that kind of thing, had bigger growth the last couple of years, and maybe we're down on those multifamily. Because I mean, this really does take into account people who are renting as well. It's population overall.
Right.
So I think, we're maybe missing some information here as far as what that all looks like. So maybe we're down on building those big buildings, even though we're up on building houses.
Right. And I do know that I saw a stat earlier with some of this information that the multi-housing units were, that was a good portion of the population. So
yeah,
that is it.
Yeah. And then I just thought it was kind of neat right at the end here. It shows you county to county who is up in growth and who is down. So, the deep red, they are down 1 to 4%. So Mendocino County is down 1.8%. Here's little tiny San Francisco is down 1.6%. So again, when you hear the news stories and they're like, everybody's leaving San Francisco. No, it's way higher than normal, but it is. I mean, look, population in January of 2020 was 889,783 people. So essentially 890,000. And now we're at 875,000. It's less people, but I don't think you would feel the difference living there.
Right. And I think that's kind of too what you're seeing in some of the different communities around this area as well.
Yeah.
It may be a slight change, but it's not, you don't really feel the change.
Yeah. Yep. For my Eldoradoites, we are up almost 1% in population, which means we're up about not even 2,000 people. It's kind of a laughable number, but I guess 2,000 people would equate to like 500 to 800 homes worth of people. So it is significant. And in El Dorado County, most of our building is El Dorado Hills. Probably, I'm not so familiar with South Lake Tahoe. I would guess they have some building going on there. And definitely spec builds are up in the last, I'd say, year and a half, 2 years. So where are we fitting all these people?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Look at all the growth that's happened in just the valley itself. So there's a
yeah,
lot of, that's a
yeah, look at it.
continuing trend that, especially in the last year or, with the pandemic, people
Yeah,
migrating from the high density areas into, less dense, looking for a little bit different lifestyle too has become, a lot of what we're seeing and hearing.
yeah.
So maybe not everybody's moving out of California. They're just shifting into different parts of California.
I think that's been a big part of it. It seems like everybody's moving away from what the news says, but when you really look at it, they're shifting from here out to here, and people in Southern
Right.
California must be shifting to, Riverside County and San Bernardino County. Although their change was just barely growth. They had significant growth in Riverside, over 0.5%. So we're talking 14, 15,000 people for them. So,
Yeah.
just a shift, like you said, to more affordable parts of California where you can get a little more space, more bang for your buck. So just continuing those trends.
Well, certainly with, the pandemic and most, if not, a majority of folks working from remote locations, that allows them, with some companies, that allows people to move their actual residents. Not every company allows that, but, if it does allow for them to move, there's been that migration or the change of, where people are living into more affordable areas. The Valley has always been very popular for that, but even more so now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then we'll shift over to this other article, which is kind of interrelated, which is California home construction hits a 13-year high, but it's not enough to slow skyrocketing prices. So about 103,000 new housing units were built in 2020, which is an 8% jump from the previous year. And the last low of building was in 2010. And so then 13 years ago, the last high was in 2005. But it's still not enough. So it really relates to kind of what we were just talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
And it does say, it does mention the apartments. So the multifamily is becoming, obviously, there's such a huge need, and I think they're really trying to develop more of the multi-housing units in all the different communities here.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, our housing crisis, so to speak, is twofold. It is both, rental pricing is kind of out of control. And for those that want to buy, the pricing is high. Nothing is really affordable about California because we can't keep up. We've had so much growth in California for 100 years. We cannot keep up with babies being born and grandparents coming. And, there's just so many reasons for people to come here. And it, up until last year, exceeded people leaving. So we really are still in catch-up mode. I don't know in my lifetime if we'll ever catch up, and I'm young.
I don't know. We'll see we'll see if they can get things built fast enough. But there is just so much growth going on, and even Folsom and Roseville. I mean, just so much building is happening, and they continue to build. And developers are continuing to move that dirt and get it sold off to the builders so that they can get building houses. So, especially out in my area, I know a developer who's trying to sell off lots too. So, it feels like everybody is trying to move in the right direction. Just how fast can we get there, especially with all the construction costs being so high right now. Yeah. And in one of those articles, I mentioned the workforce, right? The construction workforce, it's hard to find workers. So, those things will unfortunately slow down or curtail the speed at which they can, build those homes. But hopefully they can, it looks like they're still moving along well.
Yeah. I mean, definitely certain areas they're, moving along, but I have a couple buyers who are looking to buy new, and the wait lists at the new home companies are long.
Are they?
Because I mean, honestly, the fight to get a new home is easier in many ways than a fight to get a resale home, but you do have to expect there's going to be a wait list, which means You will eventually get to say, yes, I'm ready to go. And then when you say yes, it could still be 9 months or a year before that house is
Right.
finished.
Right.
So, but you get today's price when you move in next year. So,
You know what? I do have a question for you. I've been hearing some folks that I know that are moving out of state, maybe purchasing new. They put in deposits, signed contracts, and then the builder came back and said, we've had increases in lumber prices and increases we have to pass along to you. Are you seeing that trend happen here? Or does it seem like as though once they kind of get it going, price is set and done?
I haven't seen it here yet. I haven't personally
That's good.
had a story. I did have, I wasn't clear on this entire scenario because I was working with the buyer, but the seller of that house was moving to Colorado and buying new. And he was finding, of course, that the cost that he was looking at 4 months ago had gone up a lot, primarily due to the lumber shortage.
Right.
So that's the lumber shortage is really affecting a lot of things.
Right.
And my, people, I want to believe it too. It's like, oh, well, maybe the prices on lumber will go down again in like a year or something. But I do feel like once you have a price that goes up, it's never going to correct all the way back down.
Right.
It might correct a little bit. And I'm like, oh, no offense to people who have a deck, but I'm glad I don't have one.
Right.
Well, good. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming out today and being my co-host guest here and chatting with me about all things title and escrow, and then giving some really great input on the housing market. I appreciate it.
Definitely. Thank you. It was such a pleasure. And, we always just love to kind of help agents in the community understand a little bit about what we do, because it is a little complex at times.
Yes. And to all you guys out there, just know that everything we've talked about today will be in the show notes. So if you need any of those references or want to read those articles in depth, they're going to be right down below. And if you like today's show, please follow us. We'd appreciate that, and share this with your friends and family. And if you have any real estate questions, of course, I'm always available. So thank you guys. See you next week.
Thank you.